Welcome to the Collect Your Life Incorporated podcast. This is episode 14. I am here with Minister Nadia Givens. I'm sorry, let me say her whole name.
Oh,
Nadia T.T.
don't
Givens.
forget the TT.
Because that makes her distinct.
Big TT.
Okay. So if you saw our flyer, of course, we're talking about mental health and Christianity with a whole ordained license, all those things, minister and therapist, mental health professional out here.
Yes.
So we don't just have, anybody talking to you guys. She has her credentials. So before we start, I just want you to just run down your credentials in the ministry and in the mental health field.
Okay. Hi, everybody. I'm excited to be here with my sister. And I hope that you guys enjoyed this. I hope that you learned something. I hope that it blesses you, enlightens you, educates you. I'm just excited to be here. So my credentials for ministry, I am a minister. I have been preaching for 4 years, 2018, 19, 20, 21, 4 years. But just a little more background, I've been in the church my entire life on all sides of the spectrum, being a preacher's kid. So watching the administration of church and then going into the actual ministry and preaching and helping people, outreach, evangelism. I have experienced all of that. So aside from just preaching the gospel, I have been able to work in the church, and it has been one of the loves of my life to be able to work in ministry. So on the mental health side, I have been working in mental health since 2017, but as of the end of 2021, I am officially credentialed. I am a nationally certified counselor. I have a master's degree in clinical mental health counseling. I am a rehabilitation therapist at the moment, working on my license. I'm getting my hours for the license because they need 1,000 more on top of the 1,000 I've already done. So I'm working on that, but I am certified. I am legal to practice therapy, and I am currently practicing therapy. So that is my professional background and my spiritual background.
Okay, so y'all see that I don't just bring anybody to y'all. Like, I pull out people that I know got credentials. They right. So, like, y'all, I need y'all to get up with us.
Right.
So, basically, I wanted to talk. This has been like a hot topic for a while, and I just wanted to talk about how, like, with Christianity and mental health, for me, like, I guess, say my experience as far as mental health and Christianity. Of course, I'm a preacher's kid too, and in like where I grew up, it was just like not welcoming, or it wasn't heard of to just go to therapy or go to to get help from anybody but Jesus. Like, so it was just like Jesus will handle your issues,
He will fix it.
And which he will.
Yes, he will.
He will. But I feel like there was a lack. It was a whole disconnect. Like, okay, mental health, like, you go to the doctor, but you can't go for your body, but you need to go for your mind and everything also. And because, like, you're a Christian, my therapists are Christian. Like, I have a grief therapist, and then I have a regular therapist. They both are Christian based and all that. So, like, it was just kind of, I think the first time I actually went was like after I had Carrie. Because I had dealt with postpartum depression, and people were saying stuff like, you'll be okay. I didn't believe it.
Right.
I didn't believe it, so I needed to go somewhere. That therapist was kind of like a trial and error, and then but it helped a little bit. He wasn't one that I would continue to go to, but it was still a start of trying to get it because I couldn't breastfeed. That was what I had my heart desire to do, and it was just a traumatic experience. The whole birth. Well, it wasn't. I would say not as not traumatic as some people might have, but it was still
it was traumatic for you.
It was.
Yeah. And that's understandable.
So I had to, go seek help. I was like, let me go ahead and get on top of it. And then I think the next time I went, and that was my first time, and I was like, I kind of like this. And then the next time I went was like during transition from in the course of divorce, and I was just like trying to, I guess, really find it, reestablish who I am, and because I was so lost in who I was as somebody's wife and all that, and so I had to really Jesus and therapy helped. So Jesus and therapy, like the church says,
absolutely,
yes. So then I think after that, I just was like, I need one just to have, not that I suffer from any, mental illness or anything, and I think that's like a stigma too, and I'll ask you about that too. But so not that I suffer from any mental health issues, but just because it's good to have somebody who's unbiased to talk. Yes, I have friends that I talk to that are prayer confidence, all that, but the therapist can give you that good unbiased, word, basically. Like, it's a word, but it's like professionally too, like all wrapped up in the mental health profession. So my first question, or just conversation, when you were growing up, what did you see mental health in a lot? Like, just in your opinion, like, did you see mental health?
I don't think I saw mental health until I got to college.
Okay.
So growing up in the church, I knew that there were people that were off, as my grandma would say, whereas the old saints would say people are a little weird or they a little off, or some people would just say flat out crazy. And I knew that there was something wrong with them. And I remember being I grew up in Whitehaven, being in my neighborhood and seeing people like on the street that were talking to themselves. But I never knew that mental health was a thing. And it wasn't until I got to college that I was like, oh, there's a name for this. Like, oh, these are diagnoses. Like, this is a medical, thing. And I had been saying since I think the first time I ever said I wanted to be a counselor, I was maybe like 8 years old. And at the time, it was because I liked my school counselor. And I was like, I want to do what she does. She talks to me all the time. She helps me. I wanted to be like my school counselor. Shout out to Miss Harrison. And that was the first time that I said I wanted to be a counselor. But it wasn't until I got to college that I started to see that mental health was a thing, that people actually struggle with it, that there was a name for depression, or there was a name for anxiety, or there was a name for ants in my pants. You know how people say that about kids. It's like, oh, they move too much, they're doing too much, you're restless. I didn't know that there was a name for it. So growing up, it was not something I was exposed to at all. It was, even the first times that I came in contact with it, was a complete culture shock. Absolute culture shock. Like, very weird. And the time that I've spent educationally with mental health, my own ideas about mental health and the stigmas behind it have changed. When I first started in this, and please let me know if I'm talking too much. When I first started in this, I had feelings about people taking medication. I had feelings about people, doing certain types of therapy like hypnosis and all that weird stuff, because you grew up in the church and you learn Jesus will fix it. You don't need anything else. Take it to the Lord in prayer. You don't need anything else. And once I became educated on it, that changed my whole perspective. But the blessing was that I was able to take what I knew about the Lord, about scripture, about, the Bible, and tie it into my education and find a way to meet them together. But aside from being a Christian and being a therapist, therapy in itself is a real mode of help. Like you said, when you go to the doctor, there's a brain doctor, there's a cardiologist for your heart, there's a neurologist, there's a ophthalmologist for your eyes, there's a endocrinologist for your pancreas, there's a specialist for every type of ailment that you can have, and a therapist is literally a person for your mind. So I think that's the validation in it, and I break that down to people often that don't believe in mental health, or they don't think it's a real thing, or they have a problem accepting it, especially within the church, especially within the Black church. That if there's a doctor for your big toe, if there's a doctor for your ears, ear, nose, and throat, if there's a doctor for the top of my head, there can be a doctor for the inside of my mind. And that's how I break it down to people, to help them understand that this isn't some crazy mumbo jumbo. We're not shrinking brains or anything. But it literally is just a person that God put in the earth to help you with your mind.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So, a lot of millennials, that's my age range.
Ooh.
So, a lot of millennials have been talking about going to therapy and like being very present about going to therapy, but there's like the generations before them that don't. Do you believe it's just because of the church, like that stigma within the Black community, that, or just not even just the church related, just within the Black community or minority communities that we don't? Because a lot of minorities don't go to the doctor because they don't. That's another bill that they have to worry about. They're looking at that. So, do you think that has to do with like the church talk or both?
I think it has to do with both. I think the church has played a part in relying solely on the charismatic part of church. But I also feel like it's much deeper of historically minorities not trusting doctors. And you have to think about it. If I'm a Black person, let's say in the 50s, and there are only white therapists around me, I'm not trusting I'm not doing it, Right. So if there's no representation in the field, I'm not going to somebody who doesn't look like me to help me with problems that only my people can understand. So I think that the disparity is church, social, but also just a matter of distrust. Because if there is no Black person around for me to go to, if there's no Black doctor, if there's no Black dentist, if there's, I'm just not going to go because I don't trust you, And I think over time it has been passed down generation to generation that, we're not crazy. You don't have to go to those type of people. You hear horror stories about people going to the doctor and being completely butchered or, being traumatized from an experience with a doctor. I think the church has played a huge part, but also culturally and socially has made it taboo to even consider trusting somebody who doesn't look like you or even share the same faith as you to tell you anything about anything.
Or they would like you to come to them, and then that's where church hurt comes, because some people can't keep their mouth shut and they spread your business.
The thing about that is, as a professional therapist, the first thing they teach you about is confidentiality, and that I'm legally not allowed to counsel anybody I'm related to, friends on Facebook with, that I have any type of mutual friends with, because the possibility of their personal business being outed is high. The possibility of there being a conflict of interest is high. So that's why, like, the professional side of therapy, it's made to cater to people. There are a lot of safeguards set in place so that people are protected. But when you're in the church, child, business can be spread. It can be spread. They don't understand how it hurt. Ooh.
Yeah. Ooh. And that could cause people not to want to open up to anyone. Also, like, just thinking about different issues, like growing up, like, it was certain stuff that wasn't mentioned, that was kind of swept. It was swept under the rug, like different issues that even happened that I know of now that happened in my family that was swept under the rug and it wasn't addressed. and it caused like generational pain and all this stuff. But if it had been dealt with, or it had been a strong sense of mental illness in this lineage, but it wasn't addressed. And I also was looking at something of when you said the medical side of it, that, you know, of course, we historically were used as experiments, because people just
use us as test dummies.
Yes, on everything. Because of our melanin, like just because
we were treated as lesser.
Right. And so I think that also has a lot to do with people's, with the doctor side, and just going to trusting people in general. So what ways would you try to convince people to branch out and go to therapy? Of course, like I say it all the time, Jesus and therapy be helping me through. Like, it's not just therapy, it's Jesus, the Holy Spirit, all that working together. Like, all things work together. Like, they all work together. So how would you convince someone who, you know, would like to be, but they're kind of scared or nervous?
I think it depends on what their fear is. So for some people, you do have to validate a therapist as a real provider. Like, you have to talk to them about how this doctor is for this, you know, like you said, and I really like what you said in the beginning. You were like, you know, you go to the doctor, and even though you may not deal with a mental health or like a diagnosis or something like that, you still go to therapy. And even when we're not sick, we have our annuals. We still go get our physicals. Like, even when our teeth aren't falling out, we still go to the dentist and get a cleaner. I hope. I hope. Listen, schedule an appointment. Please. I hope that, you know, we still maintain what has been given to us. So one approach is, here's a way to maintain what God has blessed you with already. And of course, understanding as a believer that the enemy is always seeking to devour, always seeking to throw us off track. You have your pastor who is there to lead, but you also have someone else who is professionally trained to help you maintain what God has blessed you with. So that's one approach. It's just educating. The second approach, I would say, would be kind of uncovering what that fear is. Some people are afraid of being vulnerable. Some people are afraid that, you know, they have been hurt in the past and they've shared information, like you said, with a pastor or with a trusted church member, and their business got, you know, spread around. Having, you know, giving them the opportunity to say, hey, just try this out. Just test this out. I think another approach would be allowing them to talk to somebody that they trust. So like for me, my first time going to therapy was after my dad died, and I went to grief therapy, and I completely told the lady all these stories about how I was fine. I didn't want to talk to her because honestly, I didn't feel safe. And in hindsight, I wish I would have talked to her because I grieved terribly after that. But I didn't trust her. So allowing people the opportunity to choose, like you said, the first guy that you went to really wasn't for you. Letting I know, listen, because some therapists, they're just not for you. They could be for other people that they may not be for you. But trying it out, it's the same way that when you go get your hair done and you try a new beautician, she may not be for you. Your nail tech may not be for you, but this is somebody who's been professionally trained, right? This is somebody who gets paid for their services, and you may need to try this nail shop and then try this nail shop until you find a place that is suitable for you. So just taking the stigma down that you're not crazy, and if you do have a mental health diagnosis that it is possibly explained through trauma, it's not your fault. It's possibly explained through hereditary means. It could be something that runs in your family. It could be possibly explained through medical reasons. Some mental health diagnoses are literally a result of a chemical imbalance in your body. The medicine that can balance it out. Just like you take high blood pressure medicine. If your body's not, or diabetes, if your body's not producing enough insulin, what do? You take the insulin. If your brain is not producing enough serotonin, which is the one of the chemicals that helps with you having a positive mood, you take something that gives you more serotonin. And saying it to somebody like that is like, oh, okay. But telling them, oh, you need to take medicine because you're crazy, that scares people.
Mm-hmm.
Talking to people in very simple terms, in a way that they can understand, oh, that makes sense to me.
Mm-hmm.
Removes the stigma, also gives them an opportunity to educate other people. And it frees them from being able to see how it's been in their generations, how it's in their family.
Mm-hmm.
It teaches them more compassion, how to be gentle with themselves,
Mm-hmm.
and overall just the wellness of life. But I believe that the foundation for introducing anybody to a new way of life is education. You have to get people to understand why they need it.
Mm-hmm.
And what does it mean if I do go to therapy? What does it mean if I don't go to therapy? What are my options? If I don't want to go to this kind of therapist, I can go to that kind of therapist. You know,
Mm-hmm.
there's a wide variety. Listen, it's all different types of therapy. That's why I had to go to school for 2.5 years, because it's all different types of orientation of therapy. But to get someone who's nervous, you have to meet them where they are. It's the same way you meet a believer where they are for the first time, a babe in Christ. They may not understand all the complexities of church etiquette or, how the King James Version sounds. But you meet them right where they are. You let them know Jesus loves you. He died on the cross for you. He saved all of that. You got them. So I think the simple things of just educating and meeting people where they are, all that to say that you got to meet people where they are. Absolutely.
In every aspect.
Every aspect.
So I liked how you said that, you have to, you go to, like you said about me,
Mm-hmm.
I went to the one guy, which, okay, he was just saying, okay,
yeah,
all right. And I was just like,
you're not
going to
right.
give me feedback. So it really became like a venting session, or like, I was just like, I just feel less of a woman because I'm not able to breastfeed. Yeah. And he was just like, okay.
Yeah. But he couldn't really connect to that because he's not a mom.
Right. And so then when I went to the next lady, who wasn't, she was just listening too. Mm-hmm. And so maybe I just needed to have these people listen to me. But I had to try people out. Yeah. And I have the right fit. I told my therapist, I was finna say bruh, but I don't need you to move.
Yeah, you need to stay here.
Right. I need you to stay here. Right. But if you don't, we can do virtual. Right. So because I feel like it's the right fit. Mm-hmm. And then just like with other doctors, any other doctors, I had to fire some. You have to find the right person for you, just like everything you said. So it does become a process because you might not have the right person the first go around. I would hope so. Yeah. And they will or if you don't have the right person, it'll just get the thoughts in your wheels flowing okay, I need to go, but I need to find somebody like this. Right. Because my first thing was I knew I wanted to talk to somebody who looked like me. Right. So you had to look like me first. Mm-hmm. And so, when I'm doing the search with Sigma, I'm if they need to be, because, of course, a lot of people, their thing also is the price. Mm-hmm. Because with my job, I get, 3 free sessions with any provider. I can leave my provider, even though I'm not, but I can go to another provider and get 3 free sessions, or I can go somewhere else. But there's, instability, but your job will actually, depending on the stressfulness of your job, they will provide for you to go to different places. And even my grief therapy is not even a cost for it. It's the program, they have grants. Mm-hmm. So if you're grieving out there, you know that you need to talk to somebody. There's programs out there that you probably won't even have to pay. It's not income based or anything like that. It's just, this is here for people. We need people to join. We need people to be a part of this. Mm-hmm. And that trust, because I know a lot of times, I don't trust a lot of people. Mm-hmm. I don't trust a lot of people with my child, to watch my child. Right. I don't trust a lot of people to do a lot of stuff. If Toya can't do my hair, then my hair just gonna be. It's not gonna get done. It's not gonna get done. I'll probably let Nadia flat iron it or something. But it ain't too many people getting in my head, because I've had too much craziness. And like I've gone too far with my hair journey and like my dermatitis, and I have to get steroid shots monthly. So like that's, if sis move, I'm moving with her. Like we gonna move. And the same thing, like with my nail tech, I'm gonna be like, oh, I gotta start over, cause like you have those people, and it's the same thing with a therapist. Like once you find one, try to stay with them as like much as possible. So my other question is, what's the difference between like people needing therapy and then needing a life coach?
So I don't. In the therapy world, we feel a way about people who call themselves life coaches, because it's not a licensed profession. Put it that way. So a life coach is somebody, to my understanding, and this is just from me seeing people being life coaches, who just is kind of like a shoulder to lean on, like a person that you go to for advice, a person you trust in certain areas of your life that you can talk to.
I could be a life coach.
Yeah, technically this. Yeah, you could.
This is like a life coach.
Yeah, absolutely.
I don't have no credentials.
You don't have to have none.
Okay.
You don't have to have. You can wake up tomorrow and put life coach in your bio and call yourself a life coach. Now there are people who do like little trainings and certifications, but they're not credentialed. 9 times out of 10, they're not. But a therapist. So let me tell y'all about the journey I had to go through. I had to get an undergraduate degree. I had to apply to a graduate program at an accredited university with an accredited counseling program. I had to go through 2.5 years, get 60 plus credits of classes. I had to get 800 hours of supervised counseling practice. So for the past year, I had been working a full-time job and also interning, providing free therapy. It was not getting paid for this at all to people. And I'm in something called community mental health. So I work with people who suffer with homelessness, severe mental illness, substance abuse, displacement. I work with people off the street. So I was providing free therapy to these people while I was getting my degree. After you get your degree, you have to, like I said, get another 1,000 hours of supervised practice to get a license. Also, I had to pass a national counselor's exam. So the credentials for being a therapist is a lot.
It's expensive. It's like being a teacher.
It's
like
extensive and expensive.
Expensive and extensive.
It's a lot.
Okay.
But a life coach is just someone that I think probably has the potential to be a therapist. A lot of them probably could be good therapists. They have something that we call in the therapy world the natural helper gene. But they may not have the money or the time or the resources to be able to get licensed, which is okay. The only thing is sometimes you can cause harm to people. Because one of the first lessons I learned outside of confidentiality was do not give advice. You do not give advice. You do not say you need to do or I think you should do. You help people get to a place where they understand for themselves. They come to enlightenment for themselves. Or you give them suggestions or you show them the path and just kind of push them to the path that they choose. But number 2 rule, do not give people advice. And I think a lot of life coaches are probably giving advice based on their own experience, which is fine. Because Nessa, I think you can talk to people who have experienced things that you have experienced. But everybody's life is different. Right. You just have to be careful about the path that you lead people down. Because you could be, send them into the darkness, child.
And that's why I mainly say this is not therapy. Do not substitute Collect Your Life Incorporated podcast for therapy. This is not therapy. I am providing experiences on different topics. Yes. So that's why we have the licensed people. I'm licensed to teach 7 through 12.
Yes, 7 through 12.
That is what I have credentials in. I have a master's in teaching. I get a doctorate in education. That's what I am. That's what I can give you. Dr. Educate.
Dr. Ray.
Listen, trying to get there. But that's all I can do. Right. I can help you write an essay because guess what? I got a degree in English.
Right.
So I can help you write an essay, a contract, anything. But that's why I try to make sure people understand this is not a substitute for therapy. Right. Please go to the professionals who got the credentials, like Minister Nadia. Let me make sure I give you a title.
Title.
Like Minister Nadia has the credentials out here. Yeah. So, is there ever a time where you as a believer and therapists kind of like clash?
Yes. A lot of times they clash. And I'm trying to figure out how to make them mesh, because I can talk to people in therapy terms, and it's hard to do that because when you talk to people in church, they're used to being talked to a certain way, right? And sometimes people can only understand based on what they're used to being, talked to, what they understand, the language, the lingo, like the stuff that we hear in church all the time. And sometimes I'm talking to people like I'm their therapist, and it can be a good thing, but sometimes it's like, okay, that's not what they need right now. They need, especially for the Black community, one thing that I've learned is that when you're used to an authoritative figure talking to you a certain way or guiding you, leading you in a certain way, a therapist doesn't do the same thing a preacher does. A preacher gives you the information, they hoop, they holler, they sweat, they cry, but a therapist puts the ball back in your court. And it's like, what do you think about that? You don't, when you're sitting in a sermon, your pastor's not asking you how you feel about what he's saying.
Right.
You're just listening. But a therapist is asking you, hey, what do you think about this? So I have to be careful, because some people will come to me and be like, tell me what this means. And I'll go down my therapy route. And they're like, just answer me. And then some people are like, stop preaching to me. Therapize me. So it just depends. No, like for real, people will tell me I need a therapist, Nadia, right now. Okay, cool. But I do think they work well together, because to be a therapist, you have to be compassionate. Yeah. And to minister the gospel, you also have to be compassionate. And you have to care about people. And that's one thing that I do. I care about people. I care about their souls. I care about their minds, their hearts, So sometimes it get a little weird because I do too much. Because I talk too much, and then they just looking at me like, that's not what I asked you.
You had one job, and
you did not give.
You did not give what you were supposed to give.
Not at all. I be doing too much sometimes. But
I get it, because sometimes I really have to catch myself, because legally I can't just say stuff at school with the kids. I want to be like, I'm going to throw this oil on you, or you need deliverance, all these things, that we say in church. And as a believer, I be wanting to, and I just have to pray over there at my desk, and because Holy Spirit need to be coming in,
especially with my clients. So now I understand what you was asking me. It's been times where I sit in a session with a client and just full blown knew that they needed deliverance. And not because of my personal opinion, but because they were saying stuff like, the devil was talking to me. Like, they're actively telling me, I'm not assuming, they're telling me, the devil said this to me, or I'm hearing this voice telling me to go do this, or I'm hearing, and I'm sitting there like, oh, Jesus. Like, I'm sitting there with my mask on, probably praying. I'm praying under my mask, like, oh, Lord, okay, give me guidance. Because for some people, you can't say stuff like, lift your hands. You can't say that to people. You can't. And I went to a private Christian school, so I was taught how to integrate scripture into everything that I do. But all therapists are not like that. I'm not a Christian therapist. I'm a therapist who is a Christian. And there's a difference, because my faith does not overpower my degree. It coincides with my degree. But legally, I'm taught to do everything that a secular therapist is taught to do, but I choose to incorporate my faith into it. But when you're working with people who don't share the same faith as you, legally, you can't do that. You cannot do that. But I pray. Listen, I got a wall at home with my clients and their names and their issues, and I be calling them out. And because it's hard. Some days I just want to be like, listen, this is what the Lord is saying. This is what the Lord is saying about your situation. Hear ye the word of the Lord. And you can't do that. You got to be careful. And it's about, it's like scripture talks about knowing a time and a place, and there's a season for everything. And I think church people will, the church historically will be like, just pray about it. Just pray about it. There's a time and place for everything. And not to say that we should not constantly pray, because the Bible also tells us to pray without ceasing. But there is a time and place. Like Jesus wasn't, when he met the woman at the well, he wasn't going upside her head telling her that she was a sinner. He talked to her in a way that she understood. And through his revelation, she was able to understand what it was he was trying to communicate. Now, he could have came up to her and be like, you dirty woman, you with these husbands you got, and you need to be delivered, and you need to be saved, and you need to keep yourself. And how dare, you've been out here sleeping. You know how we get it in church, but he talked to her in a way that was appropriate for who she was and her situation. So I have to be careful not to push what I believe on other people, and also understand that God is sovereign. And if I pray for this person, he's faithful to answer. He's faithful to deliver them. It's not my job to try and get them to see what I want them to see. I let the Lord do that. Right. So it's understanding my role. Gotta stay in my lane. Stay in your lane. Because he's the powerful one.
Right. Right. And just let him lead you. Yes. Basically.
Yes.
Is there anything else you would like to share just with being a minister and being a licensed therapist?
If you're considering going to therapy, for those who are listening to the Collect Your Lifers, I'm gonna call y'all the Collect Your Lifers. If you're considering going to therapy, and you are a believer, pray about it. Okay, let the Lord show you who to try out. If you're not a believer and you're considering going to therapy, research. Okay. My first therapist was not a Christian. She was a Jewish, lesbian, white woman. And she gathered me, collected me, if I may.
She collected your
life. Did she collect me?
She did.
And once I got to a point where I was like, now I need to talk to somebody about stuff that relates to me being a black woman, I found another therapist. But my first therapist was the complete opposite of me, but she was a professional. And she asked me, do you want me to incorporate faith into our sessions? I said yes. And a good therapist is someone who can do that despite what they believe in. I took religion classes. I had to learn about other people's faith so that I would know how to talk to them. I had to learn about other people's cultures, like how to approach someone who's Asian. You don't make direct eye contact with somebody like that, because to them that's not respect. So that's the kind of, we were trained to do this kind of stuff, to respect different cultures. But my first therapist was nothing like me, and she still did her job. Now, that may not be for everybody. As a therapist, I knew it was okay for me to go to somebody else. But for somebody who's trying it out for the first time, if you want a male because you're a guy, go for it. If you are a female and you want a male, go for it. Try it out. Do your research. And for your believers, pray about it. Because I believe that God has put people in the earth to assist us along the way. Just like Janessa is a teacher. She was given a natural gift to be able to teach. And she has done well with her gift. And I want people to listen. Doctor is doing amazing, all right? I know your students are being blessed on a regular basis. But also understand that a therapist was given a natural gift to be able to assist. But I also want to make a clarification. I'm a therapist. I do not prescribe medication. It's a psychiatrist. So you have a psychologist who studies the mind. You have a therapist who actually practices therapy. And then you have a psychiatrist who is a medical doctor. Psychiatrists are medical doctors. I do not prescribe medication.
Okay? So they actually go to medical school, and then they have their specialty.
It's a dual thing. Yeah, it's a dual thing. They are MDs with a specialty in psychiatry. However, because of where I work in community mental health, I do help people with their medication because of just where I work. But we do not prescribe medicine. So if you go to your therapist and you say, I need some anxiety medication, they're going to tell you to go to your doctor. Because we cannot. And if your therapist does give you medication, report them, okay?
Because they are
out of order. Okay? I took one pharmacology class. I am nowhere near able to tell you anything about medication. But if you find yourself taking medication, do your research. If you find yourself in need of it, I am encouraging people to do their part to remove the stigma. As a person who is a believer, as a black woman who at one point in time felt like medication was the devil, I did. I felt like it's pharmakeia, it's witchcraft, real super spiritual, until I learned that the brain has chemical levels. And certain medicines, just like certain foods, just like certain vitamins, will literally help. Listen, vitamin D, it literally boosts your mood. And some medications just help with, like the balances in your brain. So if you find yourself on the other side of therapy needing some medication, do your research and know that it's not something wrong with you or that it's your fault. Something is happening, and that there's a resource to help you get to a point where you can manage what's happening. Yes. That's the way I have to frame it to people. Is that it's not that you're evil, you're terrible, you're all of that. Something's happening. And we just got to do what we got to do to make sure you can be okay with what's happening. It may not be that way for a lifetime. It may be that way for a lifetime. But if this is going to help you live a productive life, what's a penny to a dollar? So the stigma. Do your research and just find peace within yourself. For my believers, pray about it. If you get prescribed something and you don't feel comfortable with it, check to see first if this is just you being super spiritual. Because sometimes our biases will get us out of whack. But do your research, pray about it. Let the Lord lead you on what to take, so that you can take care of yourself. Gotta take care of yourself. So I think that's my last little tidbit. You asked a really good question.
Well, I really appreciate you for joining us. We appreciate you at Collect Your Life Incorporated for joining us tonight. I was going to say today. On tonight. So we, again, appreciate you. We have something for you. We'll give it to you. But we really appreciate you for joining us. And we hope that you guys go seek the therapy that you need. Also, as if believers, make sure you still believe and don't let Jesus go.
They ain't a substitute. They
go together. A shirt say Jesus and the and
there we go.
An addition, addition. Okay. So make sure that you are going to doing both. You need both. Yes. Okay. Yes. In this day and age. Okay. So thank you for listening, and we'll see you for episode 15.
Woo, woo, woo.